I don't really know what I believe, and I don't think I care.
Because if you have no need, you have no reason to listen to the gospel. A full-time vocational minister.
There are a lot of people who are like more progressively Christian or grew up more progressive who are able to reconcile some of those things with their faith because they're not taught the world is black or white and those are your two options.
Christianity is like a Jenga tower. Once you remove the bottom blocks, the whole thing comes crumbling down.
Yeah, and like we're never going to understand an all-powerful deity.
Hey, I'm Elijah, and you are listening to the Hopefully Wandering podcast. Today I'm joined with my co-host.
Hey, I'm Collier. I'm the co-host of the Hopefully Wandering podcast.
As my bestie, we are just two ex-evangelicals, as we like to call ourselves. Collier and I both grew up in the church, went to youth group together, led worship, and we're involved in full-time and part-time ministries at the Bible college, and have just ended up at a deconstructed place. And where that exactly lands in the forest of ideologies changes day to day, but Hopefully Wandering podcast, this podcast is just about our explorations of things we weren't allowed to think about, whether it's philosophy, ideologies, other religions, experiences of people who maybe were marginalized by the church. And we just like to live in the in-between in all of the areas that we never got to experience when we were evangelical. So today, Collier, you want to introduce our guest?
Yeah, today we are joined by a special guest. If you've been listening for a while, you know that we love to have guests on. So follow us on Instagram and stuff for more. And if you want to be on the show, let us know. But today we have a very special guest. It is the amazing Ash. You want to introduce yourself?
What up?
Hey, I'm Ash. It's me.
Okay, so we are joined by Ash. And Ash, right off the bat, how about you say just a little bit, a brief like elevator pitch about who you are and then how you know us and yeah.
Yeah. So, oh goodness. I instantly just thought of my job as like my first descriptor of myself, even though it's not completely who I am.
Who really are you? Yeah.
But anyway, I work for a museum and I'm an artist and I am also a poet in my free time. Trying to get back into painting. I used to do studio art in college and I had to take a break a while because I was like living in my car, bouncing from place to place. Can get into that later. Finally have a place now. I'm painting again. Been in the spoken word community for probably about a year now. That's been really fun. And yeah, I'm like you guys. I am deconstructed. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say. I feel like we'll get into it more, but that's like my main bullet points of what I do. I also do pottery on the side, but that's more just like for fun.
You're so artsy. I love it. It's like everything besides what we did.
Yeah, well, I was voted most artistic in high school, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you should have led with that. That's the most important one, obviously.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That high school, stamp of approval is really what defines me. So.
Oh, yeah. That's what Elijah and I hang our hats on. That's what we define ourselves still by.
Oh,
so,
absolutely.
Of course. Yeah. Well, fun. Yeah. So Elijah and I were in a band, or Elijah's still in the band, I guess, and I'm not because I moved.
I didn't go into that.
And that's how we know Ash is through our drummer. And so it's been awesome to get to meet her and just spend some time with her. So yeah, that's super cool. Like how creative you are. I love that. Super artsy. And first, before we get into more of your story, we're going to play the hot seat. This is something we used to do in our youth group, where they would essentially torment the guest preachers by giving them a lot of controversial questions or quick answer questions in something they called the hot seat and put them on the stand and try to get them to embarrass themselves or something like that. So we do our own version of that, which is more about just having fun and getting to know you rather than trying to make you suffer. So have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen the hot seat where you were from?
Yeah, I never got picked for it, and I was always really butthurt about it. So
Today
good.
is
Okay.
your day.
it's
Yes.
the redemption day. So
Okay, so that's the reason that you decided to come on. Okay.
yeah, no, honestly, I just listened to the podcast and I was like, this is my chance to get the hot seat finally.
Cool it with the pick me energy. Okay, I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is just an avenue to heal my childhood wounds.
Yes. It kind of is though for all of us.
Honestly, kind of.
Don't
Yeah.
think. Just let the questions wash over you.
Okay.
First thing that pops in your head.
And wash over you like a flood. Let heaven, let it roar. Fire
Oh
fall.
God.
Yeah.
Is this a worship song?
Yeah, probably. Anything to do with flood or water is usually a
Yeah.
worship
That's a
song, so-
bridge of like a lion.
Like a lion. Yes. Sorry.
Of course it is.
Of course it was. Although my favorite water one, sorry, I don't know why I'm saying this, but my favorite one is a Jars of Clay song where the first line is "Rain, rain on my face."
Oh my God.
My favorite opening line to any song.
I like that one worship song where they say fuck.
I don't know about that one.
I
It's,
don't know either.
I've not heard that one. What?
They didn't play that in my church. Oh my gosh.
Anyways, what song lives rent free in your head?
Rent free in my head. Oh, I hate Heliotrope from Runner, and that's probably in the top of my mind because we just saw concert this weekend. So yeah, it's an amazing song. You guys should listen to it. It's great. It's always, and it's just like always running.
That's way better than the songs that are stuck in my head.
Yeah, I feel like normally it's TikTok tracks, but luckily the concerts like wash that out a little bit. So.
It is healing for that.
Yeah.
Are you a cat person or a dog person?
Cat, 100%. I used to be a dog person, and then we've had some dogs with traumatic experiences. So like we had like rescue dogs that had behavior issues, and just realizing just how much care they requires.
Yeah.
It's like a child. I feel like people don't realize like how much care their dogs actually need, and I'm just not at that point in my life.
Oh, totally. No, I've seen the light too. I used to be a total dog person, but yeah, same.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you could reside in any like fantasy world, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I just read this. There's this trilogy called Children of Time. And it is where a virus that was supposed to save humanity by uplifting monkeys to like rapidize evolution on other planets, so that way we could survive our species on other planets, accidentally lifted up a different species of spiders. And so there's this like whole world of like this elevated species of spiders and humans, and it's crazy, and it sounds crazy, but it's so well written. It's such a good book, and it's called Children of Time. It's a big boy, but it is the most amazing book, and I feel like it tackles some social issues really well using like this extraterrestrial species, and basically like pointing out the things that like if only humanity had chosen the right path and things could be different. Like it shows like it comes to this crescendo of like where you feel like as a human, you're reading it and you're like, oh, their only option is to like commit genocide. But then they like find a different solution in order to like coexist with this other species. And they like tackle like other issues. Like they reverse sexism to where like in the spider species, like the females are like it's like a matriarchal society. And so like the males are subjected to sexism. And it like, I feel like by reversing a lot of these things, like you see the points in a different lens, and it's really cool, really well written, and the world building is incredible. So
oh, that sounds so good. Yeah, I just put that like top of my list. I have a long book list, but that's going to the front.
It's amazing. I love it.
Oh, that sounds so good. It sounds like right up our alley. We'll probably I'm predicting that we're both going to read it, and then we'll
like
probably have you back on.
It's
we'll probably have
good.
You back on a second time to do like a breakdown
just to talk about Children of Time. Yes. It's amazing. And it tackles questions of God as well, which is also cool. The way
that's what we're about here.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I loved it. Incredible series.
Yeah, love it. It is my turn to ask, isn't it? Let's see. Which scenario do you think you could win in a fight if you fought against 10 5-year-old children, or if you fought against one what's the word I'm looking for? German Shepherd.
I feel like I could take both of them.
Yeah.
Because I've definitely had to deal with like 20 children at some point. So like I could do
Hunt
that
'em.
easy.
But could you like actually hurt them? Like, would you?
What?
Like, I mean, ethically, like.
Ethically, but like the dog doesn't have a
But if they're trying to
conscience.
kill you, yeah, they're all trying to kill you. So
Yeah, like I don't know. That's hard. If I have to kill them, I know what I should say, but I still want to say the 5 children.
yeah, no,
That's what kids.
I know I should say the dog, but I just like I love
Yeah.
German Shepherds. They're
Yeah.
my
this
favorite.
the scene
breed.
in I Am Legend was too traumatizing. So yeah,
Yes. I love German Shepherds too much. It have to be the 5 kids. And kids can sometimes they deserve it, you know?
yeah,
Yeah. So Lexi gets a call. You're in
Oh, God.
jail.
I'm in jail.
What did you do?
I stole, obviously. I have a problem with stealing a little bit. It's fine. Not
I mean,
really.
listen, I ring up the organic avocados as regular avocados all the time.
Oh yeah.
okay?
For legal purposes, this is definitely not real, but I definitely like
Mhm.
steal glasses from like every bar I go to. And it's like how like we have our glass collection. So
yeah. Oh, I love those. Yeah, I know. We have a little IHOP mug. I love that. It's our favorite. One of those tiny mugs they give you for coffee.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Especially if it's cute and small. Come on. You're just asking for it to be stolen.
Yeah, you can fit it like in your pants or your pocket easily. Like it's
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Donuts or muffins?
Donuts. Because there's this little donut shop that makes mini donuts, and you can like they make them fresh, and then you can get all these different toppings on them, and they're so good. And that's the first thing I thought of. So
Ooh. Yeah. Follow-up question. Are mini versions of everything better?
I think so, because I feel like
Yeah.
it forces you to really focus on the bite, and I think
Mhm.
you enjoy it more because you have to. You have to like relish it.
Oh yeah.
So. Yeah. So I think smaller everything for sure.
Do you think that aliens believe in humans?
Yeah, I think that if there is, I think that if there is intelligent life, which I suspect that there is, they're probably a lot smarter than us, and probably either know that we exist or like, I don't know. I feel
Yeah.
like yes.
I guess it depends on what you mean by believe in, because like I
Yeah,
don't
and
believe in
also-
humans at all.
I guess that's true. I mean, they might not know exactly like what species we are or like, you know, the details, but they're probably like, oh yeah, there's probably other intelligent life as well. Like, you know, we don't know what aliens look like if they're out there.
Spiders.
Spiders, yeah, obviously that.
Collier, do you remember that shadow question we cut out of one episode that you
Oh
asked?
yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm
wanna
sorry.
hear
I just
it.
remembered that.
I want to hear it now.
No, you don't.
All right.
Yes, I do.
If you could smash any character from the Sonic the Hedgehog universe, who would it be?
Tails.
Tails?
Okay. Guys, I've got to go on a really random tangent about this. So there's a rumor right now that the voice actor from Sonic, from like the Sonic Adventure games,
Uh-huh.
recently had an affair on his wife, who played the voice actor for Tails. And with the person he had the affair with, he was accused of using the voice in bed.
Oh my god.
Wait, the Sonic one was or the Tails one?
The Sonic one. The Sonic
That's
voice actor
incredible.
cheated on his wife, who played
Oh my
Tails,
god.
with someone else. And
Dude,
apparently-
if somebody from that game is going to use the voice in bed, I would so want it to be Shadow. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Can you imagine?
Oh my god.
It's my favorite game. I love that.
I Tails was always my go-to character, so I had to stay loyal.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, yeah, Tails was always my go-to. Like, he was like probably my go-to playing character, but yeah. I'd have to say Shadow though, with the one that I would most like to be in bed with for sure.
I honestly didn't even like think about Shadow. I was just like, my mind was into like Tails. First one. Oh my gosh.
What's your favorite swear word?
Favorite swear word. I feel like I say like, I'm trying to think of what I say the most. I guess just fuck. I don't know. That's so not creative. It's just gets the job done.
Yeah.
So versatile. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to have a better one. Yeah, it's very good. I had a question and it literally like flew out of my mind. So wow, I'm gonna think of a different one. I'm sorry. What animal would you most want to be?
I just keep thinking hamster because I'm obsessed with my hamster, and he has like one brain cell, and I just want to know what that's like. I just want to know what it's like to have like no thoughts.
Yes.
Does Nona not have any thoughts?
I know. Yeah, I just got a hamster, and actually, I looked at your Instagram reel of Pancake before buying Mars.
Pancake is literally the light of my life. His surgery went great. He's fine.
Good. Yeah, I was gonna ask about that.
He survived. He survived, and it ended up not being cancer like they thought.
Yeah.
It was something completely else that was completely treatable. He's doing great. I was literally like sobbed 3 times.
If you could choose,
I thought he was just. I thought he was gonna die for sure. So he's gonna die, and I'm gonna spend like $700 on his death. Like,
oh. Ash?
What happened? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. You're having a little connectivity issues.
Mm-hmm.
The iPad hotspot. No.
No.
Turn your video off and wait, there you are.
Oh,
hi.
You're
What's
connected
up?
again.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
Can you repeat that last little bit about Pancake? Because I think we didn't get it.
I probably just said that he was fine, and I thought I was gonna spend like $700 on him to die.
Mm-hmm.
But he's fine, and it wasn't $700, luckily. So it's like half that, which was nice.
Good. On our last hamster a few years ago, I spent like $50 to euthanize him because people say I was like crazy for euthanizing a hamster, but I was like, I don't want him to suffer, or like, and I don't want to kill him myself. Like, no.
Collier, I could have done it much cheaper than that.
No, but the funny thing is, so he was old, he was ill, he like had some sort of thing that was going to kill him. Soon.
No
anyway.
hamster has a peaceful death, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, his was probably the most peaceful. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, like euthanization was probably the best option.
Yeah,
they always have something traumatic happen. Like,
oh, definitely. Yeah, that's the funniest like Reddit thing to look up is hamster deaths. Like, they just die in the craziest way.
I'm gonna look this up on Reddit now tonight.
You definitely should. It's a fun rabbit hole, but also, I don't know if fun's the right word, but.
All right, a couple more each, Collier.
Yep, I think it's to you now.
Ash, if you were a motivational poster, what would it say?
A motivational poster?
Yeah, like if a picture of you was on a motivational poster, what would the motivational poster say?
Just keep swimming, I guess. I don't know.
There you go. Okay.
The first thing I thought of, this was like a quote that got me through so much of my life, was
Yeah.
this too shall pass.
There you go.
Because like it put into perspective that like everything was only gonna be so long. Like you could get through the worst thing if you took it like 10 seconds at a time. You know, like it's gonna be over eventually.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was maybe also a good one, but
Yeah, that's a good
I
one.
don't know.
Yeah.
Too much Bible versiness to it now.
That's solid. It does. Yeah. Is that a Bible verse or does it just like sound biblical? Because I don't know.
I think
It sounds
is
like a Bible verse, but
I think it's from. I think it's an Ecclesiastes.
it might be. You might be right. Yeah, yeah. But it's also a song by OK Go, and that's a good song. So.
Nice.
Mine would be like an anti-motivational poster, and it's like, everyone sucks.
Everyone sucks and no one's paying attention to you, so just do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember the question I was going to ask. So, Ash, what is a movie like what is your favorite movie that you would be embarrassed to tell people is your favorite movie?
Oh my god.
I guess kind of like a guilty pleasure, but more like it's embarrassing for you to admit that you just like love this movie. Or TV show if that's easier. I don't know.
I mean, I feel like everything I like. I wanted to say like maybe Zootopia because that was like my comfort movie for a while.
Yeah.
But like I feel like everything is just a phase for me. So I'm like, well, I don't really care for it now, but I remember I was obsessed with it for a time. So like maybe Zootopia.
Yeah. Shakira's song in that. I love it. I still get that stuck in my head. Like every once in a while, it'll just come to me, and I'll start singing the
Not Gazelle.
the Gazelle. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I also have really bad recall, so like, I don't know what I watch. It goes in through the eyeballs and out my head. So.
All right. Well, I'm gonna take us home, Collier. What's
Okay.
your favorite flavor?
Oh my gosh. I knew that I was going to ask this and I still couldn't come up with anything. Maybe orange.
Orange. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I feel like that can be really versatile. So yeah, orange. Also, it's my favorite color. So orange.
I
good
love
one.
the variety of answers that we've got for this question.
Yeah,
I mean,
we really
it's
have.
been
Yeah.
like- it's been like vanilla, orange, beer.
Is beer a flavor? I guess it is. Yeah.
Can be.
I guess it's whatever.
Listen, if Tide Pods and like bleach can be a flavor, so can beer.
Oh my god. Someone literally died at my college from eating a Tide Pod. So
Oh, really?
yeah, which is just so sad and just like so
I thought that
stupid.
was more of like I didn't even think that was like real. I didn't think people actually did that. I thought it was like
no,
a
someone like
story.
on our campus, they like sent out an
Wow.
email about it. They were like, hey, don't be stupid.
I'm pretty sure someone
Wow.
at like one
Yeah.
of our local Christian schools died of autoerotic asphyxiation. So I mean, like weird deaths are.
that's suppressed sexuality, really.
Yeah, that's
It was definitely a Christian school too.
that is. Yeah.
Whew. Dangerous in more ways than I thought. Oh god.
Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, let's get into more of your story now. So you survived the hot seat. Congratulations. You finally did it.
Yay.
You finally got your wish.
Dude,
Yep. You can die happy now. So
I can.
yeah.
Oh my god.
Man, Ash, I just remember back when we met up at the ramen shop and just started diving into your story a little bit, which I know
Yeah.
it's like an anime version of the Christian, like let's meet up for coffee, except let's meet up for ramen.
Yeah.
And like I know we just like went the broad overview
Yes.
over everything you want to talk about and of
Mhm.
your story, but like even then, like you hook, line, and sinker. I was bought in. I'm like, oh my god, what the
Yeah.
heck is going on? I mean,
It's
you've
very
been through a lot.
interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. And honestly, I think the fact that I've been through a lot plays into my story because then later I was asked to share a lot. So, which ended up being really traumatizing. Fun fact, having kids share their trauma in front of an audience isn't a great way to help them deal with their trauma.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, before we did start, I did want to pull a little 180 on you guys. I know at the end, sometimes you guys do, sometimes you guys do like this thing where you ask, like, is there anything that you'd want to say to Christians maybe that are listening?
Oh yeah,
Whatever.
let's
And
pull
I
it up
kind of
right.
wanted to do that. I wanted to do it at the beginning because I wanted to kind of put a disclaimer for my story. And the disclaimer is, I feel like if you are in a position, if you're a Christian and you're in a position where you want to hear my story and you are looking to the details to find reasons, either A, to discredit me, or B, to like be like, my church would never do that, or that wouldn't have happened, or I wouldn't have treated you like that way, I would like you to instead like get out of that defensive mindset and realize that if you are a Christian and you are still participating in like church culture, that, and I mean this, I don't mean this in like a mean way, but like you are part of the problem. And like, even though even though you yourself might not necessarily be doing these things, by being in that defensive mindset, when people like me share their stories, you aren't going to receive them and you're not going to hear them, and you're going to miss the point because you're going to be so focused on it being you centered and on you being like, well, I wouldn't do that, or my church wouldn't do that. No, you're not hearing it. Like, and that's what, and like so many people like me, like have these same stories. And I made a comment earlier about how like the details don't matter. They don't. My detail, like the details of my story, like they're interesting for sure, but there's so many people that have the same, that have had the same impact. And I think if you are in the church and you want the church to be different, you need to hear people and hear that this impact is real and that it's happening. And instead of looking for ways to excuse yourself from that accountability, I think that you need to think about how you can change that impact. But just because I've reached this point with Christians, because I have some friends in my life that are still Christians, and it's sometimes hard because I feel like the thing that they always tell me is not all Christians. And it's starting to sound like not all men.
Yeah.
It's just like, and it's just like a way for people to take themselves out of the seat of accountability. And that's why like things aren't changing, like, because you are not willing to admit that you're part of the problem. And I feel like that's just something that like we all have to do when we're like dismantling systems around us. We have to acknowledge that we're part of the problem, or else things don't get better. So if you aren't in a place where you can do that, just don't waste your time like listening to my story. It's not gonna like, it's not gonna make a good impact if you're in a position of defensiveness going into it. So keep an open mind and just like focus on like, okay, where are ways in like my life or in my church that we might have had the same impact, and how can we prevent this to keep from like happening more, if you want to be those good loving people that you claim to be. But yeah, that was just like my disclaimer for like Christians that listen. I know you guys said a lot of Christians listen, because I feel like it's really easy to try to like discredit the storyteller, and I don't want to waste people's time. If you're gonna do that, just doesn't matter. It's just don't listen. Go do something better. Go spend time with your family or something. I don't know. But yeah, I feel like that out of the way. I feel like my story is interesting because it's kind of a generational story as well. I feel like the trauma that the church has inflicted on my family didn't start with me. It started with my parents. My parents did not grow up Christian. They both came from poor economic backgrounds, and they both had a lot of trauma in their lives. And they had kind of this catalyst trauma. I think growing up in America, no matter what, you're going to at some point in your life hear about Jesus, hear about the gospel. And they had this kind of catalyst trauma. They lost it. My mom was a teen mom, but she lost her child. And when she lost her child, I think that trauma to them was a sign from God that they needed to turn their life around. And that was like the message that they got from, the church and from people around them. And I think with that, it's interesting because I think people, especially people with like poor economic backgrounds and a little bit like less educated, neither of my parents have a college education. I think the church likes to find people that are traumatized and then like indoctrinating them and creating almost like this codependent relationship to where like I don't think my parents even they buy whatever the church taught them. They don't really even really understand how to dive into the text themselves and to kind of like like they don't know how to like I guess like digest that doctrine or to like maybe dismantle it or question it because their connection to the church was based on trauma. It's not based on, you know, they investigated this belief and it wasn't compelling. It was based on this traumatic connection, and to them it was a lifeline, and to them it was like their access to putting themselves in a better position in life, which you could say that it did some good, maybe in the beginning, helped them turn their life around, but I think it also damaged them in a way that they became very obsessed with. They wanted to be seen as good people, and it was constantly them trying to prove themselves to the church, and they were always serving, and they just like wanted to clean up their act and like basically like sponge off their past because they both had really rough past. And it kind of, in their parenting, I think it then transferred to like we had to be perfect children because anything that we did influenced the reputation of the family, because we were constantly fighting the reputation of like, you know, we had a lot of drug use in our family and like just like a lot of other issues. And I feel like they were constantly fighting against that narrative and constantly trying to like prove to themselves that they were good. And I think also in their minds, if you serve God, bad things won't happen anymore. And they had like, of course, had this like terrible trauma, and to them, they had to then become perfect Christians. So that way something like this wouldn't happen to their kids again or wouldn't happen to them again. And I think it definitely changed the way that the course of their parenting went for us. And then, like I said, my family has a lot of overdose. And as a result of one of those overdoses, we adopted my cousins. And it was just a really traumatic event. And it wasn't like it wasn't like a planned adoption. It was kind of more of like, this is what has to happen. And I think them coming from traumatic backgrounds, they're bringing their trauma into the family. My parents have their own trauma. And I have a parent that has mental health issues, and it kind of caused them to break down. And so I had one parent that was working all the time and one person that was in this constant state of their mental disorder being activated, I suppose is the best way to put it. And it was to the point where like they thought they were going to die at some point. Like their hair completely fell out. They were so stressed out. And that definitely like came out in their parenting too, because I think because there's so much that was happening, the only way that they could manage parenting was to have this really like legalistic church, like what the church taught them. Like, you need to make sure that your kids aren't doing this, this, and this, and this. And so like, they were just very, very hard on us if we messed up, and we messed up a lot because we're kids. But I think like the punishment was often disproportionate because everything was about identity. It came back to identity every time. So like anytime we messed up, it wasn't like, oh, you made a mistake. It was, oh, you are disgracing our family. So there was just like this very big like shame element to their parenting. That was definitely like very hard as a kid. And then on top of like all the other trauma that was just kind of happening around, it was just a lot. And like I said, like my parent with mental health issues really grabbed onto the anxiety that I think the church can instill in people of like the rapture and conspiracy theories. And there was one time where we like filled up our basement with water because they were convinced like the government was poisoning the water. Like just like these things that kind of come out of that alt-right Christian pipeline, these like fear tactics. And I think people, especially people with trauma, are like more susceptible to because they've had to deal with fearful circumstances and terrible things happening their whole life. So it's not so hard for them to believe that terrible things will keep happening. And it is such a comfort to think that if you're on God's side, maybe you'll be spared some of that, like some of the worst of it. like maybe you'll be in a better position. And I think my parents definitely, like, religion was that way of them having that illusion of safety that didn't really exist. And it was like this way of them thinking that they could prevent trauma from still happening in our family in a way that they could protect us from it. But then really, I think that belief set probably caused them to enact, like, not intentionally, but enact more trauma on our family, because then it was this, like, everything was a matter of, like, it felt like life and death. Like, anytime you, like, made a mistake, it was like the end of the world. So that was just really hard growing up in that environment. And I struggled really hard with my mental health. I've been diagnosed with CPTSD, and there's years of my life that I just don't remember. And it's really, like, difficult, because, like, trying to, like, remember even, like, how my story started, like, there's just gaps that I'm just like, I don't really know how, like, some things came to be. But I know even for me, the church was also the story of Jesus. I think there was somebody else on your podcast that recently shared her story, and she talked about how the church really loves to go after traumatized teens. Like, that's their bread and butter. Like, they love to go after those children because they're super easy to indoctrinate, and they are very susceptible to that, like, message. Like, they just, like, want so much to be loved that they're kind of willing to do anything in order to receive that, and they're, like, very easily manipulated. And I feel like that definitely happened with me. I was obsessed with the character of Jesus. And I just, like, wanted to be the best Christian ever. I wanted to be a preacher. I think by the age of 9, I was like, I'm going to be a preacher. And and I remember, and I think also, like, coming from my family, I was definitely socially behind. And, like, because of all, like, especially, like, all the trauma that was happening, I was socially behind. I didn't understand a lot of, like, social norms and expectations that I think that the church expected to be placed on me. I didn't like, for example, like, a woman shouldn't be a preacher. That didn't compute with me. To me, it was like, if I felt like God wanted me to do something, I should just do it. And I remember I went on this mission trip, and I, like, got up on stage and, like, preach a little message when I was, like, 10 years old or whatever. And I remember afterwards, and the reason why that happened is there was, like, a situation that happened with the church where, like, the adults left the room for whatever reason for a minute, and I decided to, like, get up there. And I remember getting, like, pulled down afterwards and being told, like, explain, like, why on earth would you do that? You're a woman. Like, you're a girl. Like, this would never be, like, this would never be God's calling. Like, you shouldn't do this. Like, what are you doing? And also, like, you're a kid, so, like, what are you doing? And me, I just had this, like, I think because, like, again, societal things just kind of, like, went over my head sometimes. It didn't make sense to me why they were telling you this. I didn't really, like, it wasn't that I was trying to be rebellious. It was just that I didn't understand, and it didn't make sense to me. And
I mean, patriarchy is totally made up. So, like, a 10-year-old wouldn't know. It's not natural.
And also, like, I felt like I feel like a lot of people that went to my church were, like, suburban families that had been going to church their whole lives. And, like, the behavior is kind of passed down where, like, people know what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. And I just didn't know any of that. I was
That's
just
most
like
church people. It's just, they forever. It's part of who they are.
Exactly. And for me, I was in it because I was, like, obsessed with, like, this Jesus character. I wanted him to love me. I wanted to be the best Christian ever. I wanted to be a missionary. Like, all of these things, I really was sold out to the whole Jesus thing. And even as a kid, I always just felt like, I feel like I'm the only one that, like, my heart's really in this. And a lot of this just seems like people just coming here and doing things. And I would, like, ask the wrong questions, and, like, I would always want to be doing things, and people would just be like, oh, well, you're too young to do these things. Like, I don't know why you're asking, why you know, like, because I would be like, one of my dreams is I wanted to start my own homeless shelter. I had crazy dreams when I was a kid. So I was like, we should do, like, these, like, homeless things. They're like, whatever. And people are just like, we live in Lebanon. Like, what are you, like, there's not homeless people around here or whatever. But I was just, like, very much, I wanted to follow Jesus. And a lot of times, like I said, I think, like, my lack of, like, understanding social cues, I would just kind of, like, throw myself into things, and people looking back, I can see how they were, like, treating me very weirdly, but I just, like, it just all went over my head. And yeah, so then trying to think of like where to branch off from that. But I guess then like getting into high school, just like stuff at home was, still hard. And I'm trying to think of where to go off from next from this.
Well, if you don't mind, could I just like stop for just a
Yeah,
second and
I'm
ask
like, I
Ben-
kind of just like lost my train of
Yeah,
thought.
no, you're fine. I mean, that was already like so much really
Yeah.
good information and like a lot of a lot of stuff there.
I'm taking notes for questions at the end. So if I'm quiet, just know like I want to ask you some things where
Yeah, no, there's a lot. Yeah,
one
there's
thing,
definitely
yeah. Well, just as you're about to go more into your high school years, then, so this was like leading up to it. I know you mentioned that you were often used as like a trauma dump story person to presumably make others feel better or inspire faith or whatever. Was that in high school when that happened, or was that when you were little?
I think like it probably more so high school, because so fun fact about me, I guess I would say my sexuality is not straight. I'm attracted to non-men, but I was assaulted at a young age and was then in this like weird toxic relationship with a guy, and I kept trying to leave him, and I was like probably like 13, 14 at this point. And I remember telling someone like, this stuff is like happening, I don't know how to get away from this dude, he's like threatening to kill himself, like all this like crazy stuff. And getting away from that, and then the church just like being completely silent, like not really helping me, and like didn't really follow up with me on any of that. And then I remember like I forget where I forget where I was kind of going. Oh, so then like when my story started kind of becoming like used, I guess, is after I shared that story about like leaving that relationship. Then like I feel like later someone else came back to it and was like asking me just like how I got out of it and why I got into it in the first place. And then I was sharing all this stuff with this youth pastor. I was sharing like all this stuff that had happened and like how I'd gotten there. Cause then I was like, cause after I had left, I was then crying to like some other person in the future about it. And then them being like, oh, like you've like been through so much and, God saved you from that. And in my mind, I was like, no one fucking helped me. Like I tried to get help and no one helped me. And I tried to tell people and like literally no one did anything. Like I literally had to figure that out all by myself. But then I think because I felt that I had figured out by myself, I was like, well, I couldn't have figured out by myself. So they're right. It must have been God. That must have been like God saving me from that. And so it then turned into somehow it got turned into I was the kid that had a lot of bad stuff happen to her. Also, this is like a small detail. Like when we adopted like my cousin stuff, like I was also like the dirty kid for a while because like they brought lice to our family and like other like issues. And so like I had been like the dirty girl. I had been like people like knew probably. I think like people just like probably knew that like stuff was happening at home or something, but I think I was treated as like kind of this outsider. And then after this like traumatic experience with this guy happened and then got out of that, and then I was like kind of doing okay for myself. I think then they were trying to be like, look what God transformed you from like this like sad little traumatized girl to like you're now doing okay. And in my mind I was also like, I'm also not doing okay. Like I wasn't doing okay at all. But it was just like, oh, look how much you've survived and went through and like how you come out the other side. But I think what also looking back, what they didn't realize is I hadn't really come out the other side. I was just told that I had come out the other side. And so it was like basically told like, look how God healed you and use your story. But internally I was like, nothing feels healed. Nothing feels better. If anything, I feel worse about myself and like now I feel like I have all this trauma that I'm dealing with, and like people are just telling me that I'm okay, and it's like such a miracle that I'm like want to do all this ministry stuff and like want to give my life to God, and like look how much God has like used your story and like transformed your heart and like used it to put missions on your heart. And I was like, I wanted to do this when I was a kid, but like so yeah, then it just kind of became like this thing where like I would get asked to share my story a lot, and then if someone else had something like even something like remotely traumatic, then I would kind of be like called on as like the person to then also share, like to like be camaraderie. But it put me in this weird position where like I felt like I was supposed to be okay by then, and I wasn't really okay, but I was pretending to be okay because I was being used as this like story prop. And I remember like being obsessed with like Job and thinking like, okay, all of my suffering has to mean something. It has to amount to something. It has to be a part of my testimony. It has to be like, there has to be this big transformation that happens. And so I just like became obsessed with like this idea of being transformed, and this idea of like my trauma amounting to something. And that actually ended up being like one of the most harmful things for me, because then when that didn't happen, what I would do is I would get in this cycle where I would be like, well, obviously I didn't suffer enough, so I need to go make myself suffer some more. And that was when I got into like some substance abuse and just and then also part of like not being straight. I remember telling God, I was like, I always knew that I was attracted to girls from like a young age. Like I remember, like the turning point for me was like when High School Musical came out, everyone was like, "Oh, Troy," and I was like, "Gabriella."
Yeah.
And I remember like telling God, I was like, if you just send like a guy that wants to be with me, I will do anything, and I will be with that person, and like if I just get married, this will just go away. And I think also I had this pressure at home. I was taught from a very, very young age, like that like marriage would complete you, and that marriage was kind of like the ultimate destination in life. And I remember like as a young kid, a lot of times, time I did like something like bad manners, it would always be like, better not do that, or guys aren't going to like you in the future, or like no guy's going to want you if you talk like that, or no guy's going to want you if you don't brush your hair or whatever. So like there was a lot of worth placed in guys' attraction for me. And the problem was since I didn't experience attraction towards men, I was constantly just like looking for someone to just come in and like save me from myself kind of thing. And I was just like, it doesn't matter who it is. Like, I just need someone to like, if they just love me, it'll fix me, and I'll be good. And like, all of this will go away, and all of my trauma won't be for nothing. And that like, if I get married, that's like the ultimate thing in like God's eyes. And then I can do all the things that I want to do. Because I think I was also taught like as a woman, like you couldn't do things alone. Like you had to have like a man with you to do everything, like even to like travel, or like if I did want to be a missionary or something, like it was always like, well, you need to get like married so that way you have someone with you to protect you. And like I wasn't really taught to like be independent. I was definitely taught to like search for that codependent relationship. And so I think that combined with the fact that I didn't really like experience like attraction with men led me to some like really toxic relationships where if a guy showed interest in me, I just wanted them to like love me instantly, because I just wanted to skip all like, I didn't really want to get to know them. I didn't really want to like do any of that. I just wanted them to love me so they could marry me and fix me, and then everything would be good. So that was just like, that was definitely an interesting, fun fun thing to navigate as a teenager.
Did you ever
and then,
read the story of Gideon in the Bible where he like sits his fleece out and he waits for God to see if it's wet or whatever? Like that's kind of the thing I'm hearing from you. You're like waiting for God to like come into the story and it's like, hey, if you're real, you're gonna rescue me out of this situation. You're gonna show up here. And then when he didn't, you just gaslit yourself into thinking, oh, well, it must be me then. And isn't that so true?
That was exactly, I mean, that's exactly what it was. It was like, and so then because in those relationships that I had with men, I think also since like, it was mostly just me trying to get something from them. Like when they then didn't want to be with me, then it wasn't just about like, oh, we weren't good for each other. There is something fundamentally wrong with me and everyone knows it and everyone can see it. And like, and I'm never going to get to be normal. Like I'm never just going to get to be a normal person. And I felt that like black sheepness, I think just because because of like my childhood, I think like being that like the trauma kid, which I think in like church, like I think that there's always that kid. There's always the trauma kid. And like it's very obvious and it's like and it's hard to be that kid. Like it is so hard to be that kid. But I always thought like I think once I'm getting out of high school and getting into college and kind of starting to try to use the church as like my way to again kind of bring meaning to all of the chaos. I went into kids ministry. And I always tried to just be really real with my kids. And I tried to like, not make anyone feel different. Try to just be really authentic. And I got kind of like, I don't want to say reprimanded, but like, I feel like sometimes it was like, I wasn't saying what matched up with what the church wanted me to say.
No, that's what I was going to say. I as you said that, I was like, I bet they didn't like that because every time that there was someone like that I can think of, they would usually get pushed out because you can't be too real. Like they want you to be like 80% real at the max, like show some vulnerability, show some authentic sides. But if you're if you're actually authentic, if you're actually genuine, that's too messy. It's not clean. It's not pure.
And it was always interesting because I think in church, I was constantly doing I was always constantly doing the most and always wondering why I didn't fit in. Like, I was like, I'm doing everything right. Like, why am I like still, it was kind of like it kind of almost felt like I was being allowed to serve, but I wasn't wanted to serve. Like it was like, because I was always pushing so hard to be involved and I was always pushing so hard to go on like these trips and do this volunteering. And I always just wondered why, just like whenever I met with the adults and whenever we had like our training or we had our groups, I just like didn't vibe with everyone else. Like I just like, there was something that was like, I could always tell that I just wasn't fully accepted. And I felt like there was always an eye on me. And it was really interesting because in college, I was really involved with this campus ministry and I was always labeled the rebellious kid. And I wasn't like, I didn't really feel like I was being rebellious. I was just not following, again, like rules kind of just like go over my head because to me, if like the rule doesn't make sense, there's no reason why I should follow the rule. Like, I feel like, because like sometimes I'm like, like I understand like the way the rule has to be there, but like my intention's in the right place. So it doesn't matter. Like, it was kind of like, I just like didn't follow the rules. And I would always be labeled as this like rebel. And I was just like, I'm not a rebel. Like, I'm just like trying to do my best out here. And like, even with the people that I would invite and bring into like this crew, it was what it's called. I brought people to crew and it always felt like I expected them to be accepted. And like, I was like, oh yeah, like I met my friends here, like blah, 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 blah. And then like they would be iced out and I would always feel so embarrassed because I'd be like, why did I bring this person here? And like, they're not being accepted. Because I feel like the people that I connected with were probably people that were like similar to me, were probably like more like, I guess, black sheep people or whatever.
Not straight.
Yeah, probably not straight. Yeah, no, some of them gave off like, even if they were like straight presenting, they probably still gave off like that vibe.
Yeah.
This is
But,
college
like,
time, right? We're talking like campus.
yeah, this is like
crusade, right?
college at this
Okay.
point. Like college,
Yeah.
sorry, I skip a lot in my story because, like I said, I don't remember a lot of
No,
years
it's
of my
okay.
life, and I just like remember like
good.
little highlights. But in campus ministry, that was when I think I was starting to realize how traumatic my childhood had been, and starting to realize like how much like the assault had affected me, and how I had kind of like put my they call it like basically like you are re-traumatizing yourself by reenacting the assault. So I would purposely put myself in situations where I would be at risk for being assaulted. So and if a guy had an attraction to me and I could sense it, then I would just intentionally get really, really drunk, because I'm like, if they're going to try something with me, I don't want to remember it, because like, again, wasn't really attracted to them. And I was just like, and I know this is going to happen. So like, if I'm just really drunk or really high for it, I just won't remember and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I had kind of like gone through a lot of this, like re-traumatizing myself. And in college, I was starting to kind of recognize it, but I didn't know where to put it, because anytime I went to the church with it, I felt like they always just acted like it was over. Like anytime I shared anything that had happened, it was always like, oh, wow, you've been through so much. Oh, wow, you should share about that. Or like, oh, wow, like, you seem like you're doing so well. I'm like, just because I'm like holding it together for this conversation does not mean that I'm doing well. Like I'm like doing really bad. And it was like, I felt like my pain was just never seen or never believed. And I would be like, and it would just be like, oh, like, look how much you've been through. Look how inspiring you can be. Like, you can talk to other, like, we like had this like sexual assault like group that I was in. It was like, oh, like you can like connect with other survivors and stuff. And like that group was great, but I needed professional help at this point in my life. And it was never even like suggested to me. Like whenever I shared all of this, like these traumatic things that had happened to me, it was never like, that's a lot to carry, you should see someone. It was, look what God helped you survive. Look how well you're doing now. Because I think I was especially in college, I'm one of those people that school was always like really easy for me. So like I was getting good grades. I was involved in like sports, and I was like involved in clubs. I was doing all the things, but like I was not doing well. And people just like assumed that I was through it. And then, but also at the same time, I think I was just never really taken seriously in any sense, because I was always just the person that was traumatized. Like, it was kind of like they would use me as a prop to like share like inspirational story, but then like didn't actually, if I were to have a debate with someone or to try to express any opinions, it was like I was very dismissed, because it was just like, oh, well, you just, like you just don't get it, because like you don't have like the same education that we do, or like you don't have like this emotional maturity. I was seen as really emotionally immature, I think was the big thing, because I would cry a lot whenever I would share my story. I would always cry a lot. So it was always like, or I'd have these meltdowns with people, because I learned now this was part of like some of my mental health issues, but I didn't know how to process emotions. So the way that I would process emotions is I would let them build up for a very like long time, and then I would have this big like dramatic meltdown, and people would see that and be like, oh yeah, like she's like really traumatized and like, kind of crazy, and kind of like we it was kind of just like all of them like just always treating me like a charity case. Like, oh, like look how we let her do these things for us. Like, look how we let her get on stage. Look how we let her volunteer for this. Like, we're so good for like letting this super traumatized person like be involved. And it was so dehumanizing, because I felt like I was treated like I wasn't smart, and like I didn't have like my own thoughts and opinions, and like they didn't matter, even though like I knew that I did. But I knew that I think because of like all the trauma, I didn't know how to like articulate them. I didn't know how to stand up for myself, really. And so I was just like, just like very dismissed. And it was like weird, because I was like simultaneously being used and dismissed. And it was just like this very weird
Yeah.
dynamic where like, oh yeah, like you can do all these things for us, but like there was always this like air about like, oh yeah, poor Ash, like
Mhm.
you know, she's
Yeah.
you know, and I will say I was like living in my car at one point at like when I first came to college, and that was how I got involved with crew in the first place. Is that was like meeting people, and like they found out I was living in my car, and so I got to like some people like invited me into their dorm, and that was how I kind of like met people. And then I think I became really connected to them because I was like, oh, these people helped me out so much. But like looking back, they really didn't. like they were doing the bare minimum for me. That like you are like I feel like they were doing the things that they knew that they were supposed to do, not because they cared about me, but because it was the things that they were supposed to do. And I had this illusion where I was like, oh, these people love me so much. But but then there was like this like dissonance that was happening where like I was like, these people love me so much, but like why do I get the sense that I'm not accepted here? Like they're doing all this stuff for me, but like I still don't feel like I fit in for some reason. And I still don't feel like for some reason when I talk, it feels like what I have to say doesn't really matter. And it was weird because I was like, but they've done all this stuff for me, and like I do all this stuff for them. So like I kept like looking for this love that wasn't there. And it was always so confusing to me why it wasn't there. And it took like me leaving the church to realize that love was like never there. And that was hard to like recognize, but looking back, it was, I mean, I was just, you know, that's just how it was.
What was your like turning point? Because you're in I mean, I know like trauma doesn't go away, but like you're in a very different place now than you were like what you're describing then. So like what changed?
Yeah. So honestly, I'm going to say senior year. I think I was realizing that my non-Christian friends that I always felt guilty about hanging out with because they were made to feel like they were bad influences on me. They were going to drag me back into the world. Because I had quote unquote, like I'd struggled with substance use, but I feel like to a normal amount. And especially with the trauma that I had endured, I definitely had used it as a coping mechanism, but it's not like I was like a drug addict or anything. Like I was smoking weed and like drinking occasionally. And
honestly, I mean, yeah, that would be like, it's impressive that it was only that, like a regular amount. Like that's
and like
for your situation, that seems healthy.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like, yes, I used it as a coping mechanism, but they had turned, that was like another thing is they turned me saying like, oh yeah, I did like use like this to cope. They turned that into you're a drug addict. Like it was like this very big, like, it was this very big, like, everything about my story, I think the church just wanted to amplify to make it sound as like salacious as possible. Like, oh, she was a drug addict and there was like part of me that was offended by that. Cause like as someone that had like drug addicts in their family, it's like, I know what an addict looks like and I'm not it. Like, but like but I did kind of buy into that. Cause I was just kind of like, well, if they're telling me I am, and like my family does have this like trauma, and like, I kind of like believed like the stories that they would tell me about myself. Like they would tell me like, you know, like you were a drug addict and you had all this like terrible things and like God saved you and brought you out of it. And now look at all the good stuff you're doing and all that stuff. But so I had these friends and they were outside of the church and they were always seeming like bad influences because we'd like drink on the weekends or something. And I just realized that anytime I tried to bring someone from my outer circle to the Christian circle, I realized that they didn't feel welcome, and it made me really pissed off. And the crew especially is honestly, it's just a sorority. It is just like a frat sorority for Christians, and it has nothing. And it's a sorority and a frat that has a moral superiority complex. That's literally all it is. And I saw the way that they excluded people, and it pissed me off because I was like, I did have like a little bit of my own superiority because I was like, well, I can handle it, but like, you don't know if someone else can handle it. Because like, I was someone that like, I was like, I'm very persistent and stubborn and I will just keep trying forever, but I know that there's people that won't. So like, you guys need to be more welcoming and more like accepting. And it pissed me off because I was constantly fighting against this. And me and my friends, we actually, my roommate, we started this group called Bad Christians.
It's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. So this is actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this is actually my junior year, not my senior year. So my junior year, we started this group called Bad Christians with the intention of bringing the people that we didn't feel comfortable bringing to crew because we knew that they were going to get treated badly because historically they had been treated outright badly. We were like, we're going to create this and it's just going to be a safe space and we're not going to preach to people. We had a fishbowl. And we took the fishbowl and people would just write down questions that were about religion. And it didn't necessarily even have to be like Christianity specific. And we would just talk about them. We would just like go around the room. We made it anonymous. So that way it was like anonymous. And we tried to make it like as welcoming as possible. We didn't want to make anyone feel dumb for like asking something basic or like quote unquote basic or something so like controversial or whatever. And we would just have discussions about religion.
That honestly seems like the perfect church. Like if I was going to,
it was great.
if I was going to go to a church right now that was Christian, it would be like that's what I would create if I wanted to create one. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah, and it was like, and it was so frustrating to me that we had gotten to that point because I was just like, I was enraged. I was like, this is terrible that you guys are not doing this well, like that you're not loving these people well, and that we need to create this separate space. Like it was infuriating to me. But like I said, after I brought people, because I had tried so many times to bring people and I was just like, they're just not accepted. They're not welcome. They're not treated as equals. Like, it's terrible. I'm sick of it. Created this group. It was really, really fun. And I think in those discussions, I started to realize that like other viewpoints weren't as like Christianity didn't necessarily have all the right answers, I think. Because I was realizing that, like, especially from people that had like different religious backgrounds that came or different perspectives that came, I was realizing a lot of the flaws in our theology. And I think a lot of my study of the Bible was very personal, and it was just like me reading the Bible. And honestly, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I was always just constantly looking for evidence that God loved me, and that and like Jesus and like focusing on Jesus and blah, 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 blah. But then like hearing from like people who like knew Christians and like knew the faith even like maybe more so than maybe I did, and like hearing their problems with it and like kind of hearing them bring up like their qualms with Christianity and hearing that from people and me just being like, I actually have these qualms too, but I feel like I've never been able to externalize them because I've always been like too like kind of focused on my own stuff and like focused on like trying to find this like love that wasn't existing and like just trying to fit in and just trying to like do things to like be this great Christian and trying to get other people to see me as a good Christian, because I felt like I was always carrying this chip on my shoulder and I always just wanted people to see me as like a good Christian and like someone that really loved God, and people just like didn't see me that way. But then I was realizing that I had been like so focused on that I didn't realize how much I actually had a problem with a lot of the things that like Christianity is like pillared on. And in those discussions, I started like feeling internally that I was more in alliance with the atheist in the group than I was with the Christian the quote unquote the Christian side of things. And and I think that group was really good. And unfortunately, I think I was still in the mindset of like, well, you know, Christianity does have, I was really obsessed with this book called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. I hate it now. But at the time I was like, well, there's like apologetics for all of this and blah, 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 blah. But then like when when you have discussions with real people and you're not just like listening to someone that wrote something based on their intuition and not actually based on like fact, because that's like all apologetics is. It's just like, well, this feels true. And if I say it fancy, then like it sounds true. But it doesn't really have any like actual
Ben Shapiro
backing. I know, exactly. Like if you can speak something confidently enough, it sounds true. And it does intuitively sound true. And I think like for me, because I was looking at it from a biased point of view previously, I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. This sounds so true. Like I can see how Christianity is the right answer. But then when we were actually having these conversations with real people, And then like also seeing the effect that Christianity had on real people and realizing that it was like not a positive one. And I was just like, why am I a part of this? Like, I'm part of this. And I had always had a problem with evangelizing. I got to go on a lot of free mission trips because I was like the sponsored kid. So I did get to go on like a lot of free mission trips. But part of the thing that I think got me labeled as a rebel is like whenever we got paired off, I would tell my person, I was like, you know, I don't really feel like we should just talk to random people about God. I feel like we should just go hang out and just have a good time. And like, and I would get, and then like, depending on who I was with, I think that would either be, they would be relieved or they would be like, you're not doing the right thing. Because evangelism always felt wrong to me. I was like, this isn't you. We don't know these people, and
I know, and like, what impact is one small conversation going to make? Like, I remember this. I went on this one camp where the last day we paired off into big groups of like 10-ish people, and we went door to door in the surrounding neighborhoods to evangelize door to door. And this one guy specifically made an impact on me. He wasn't rude or anything, but we knocked on his door a few times, like. When he didn't answer, came to the door and he was like, hey, I work night shift, so I'm sleeping right now. And so I'm gonna go back to sleep. And I was like, okay, well, this is horrible. We just woke this dude up. He works night shift, he's grinding, and like we ruined his day probably just by like knocking on the door, asking to talk about Jesus.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
What was the best possible outcome of that? Probably not anything good.
It was awful. And I think for me, the perspective is a lot of times in my childhood, I had trauma dumped on people because they had like asked me all these questions, but then they didn't do anything to help me. And so I think when we were evangelizing, I was like, I do not want to make someone share something really personal for me when I have no resources to give them. And there's going to be no follow-up. And there's like, I don't want to drudge up something. And then like, cause I didn't want to abandon people like I had been abandoned. And that was like that was something that was like, even before I even really recognized that I was like going against evangelist culture, that was, I think, because it happened to me, I didn't want to make other people feel like that. And so I think that's why evangelism always felt wrong to me, because I was like, because people, especially when I was with someone older, they train you how to get people to open up, and they train you how to get people to like basically just share their trauma with you. And I was just like, that feels wrong. I don't want to do that. And yeah, it always felt weird to me. I didn't like it.
It sounds like you were incredibly empathetic and like mature in that way. I mean, I'm just thinking about empathy too. Like a lot of Christians who love evangelism make jokes about or don't like Jehovah's Witnesses coming to their door, you know, like they get pissed off at that
thing.
Yeah. And so I'm like, can't you have they don't have the empathy though to realize that when they're telling someone about Jesus, it's the same exact thing.
Yeah. And it was always funny because I was always told when we talked about spiritual gifts, I was always like, they're always like, you're so empathetic and you're so wise. And I'm like, well, the only reason I'm quote unquote wise is because I've actually, most of you guys, I mean, I went to Miami. Most of them have never been through something, no offense, never been to anything hard in their lives. I'm like, I just appear wise to you because I like have lived in the real world and like seen real problems, and like have had to reckon with that. But yeah, like evangelism just always felt wrong, and I hated it, and I wouldn't do it. And like sometimes, like especially with crew, because crew is very focused on evangelizing, I always got the side eye for that. But yeah, when we started this group, this Bad Christians group, the crew started like telling people specifically about me. They're like, don't get discipled by Ash. Don't, because she'll lead you away from the faith and she'll lead you away from crew. Because I was telling people, like when I would disciple people, I told them, I was like, I think evangelism is wrong. I don't think you should do it. And I was like, you should focus on like being a good person and like loving other people and like trying to meet the needs of people around you. And if you don't have the capacity to have a relationship with someone, don't share anything about Jesus. Because it's not worth it. Like, and also I felt like that was how it was modeled in the Bible as well, because it was like discipleship was like this lifelong relationship. And I was like, if you don't want to be friends with this person forever, don't like go and try to like
Yeah.
drudge up all this stuff about them. Like, it's not doing anyone good. And also, I remember specifically I was discipling someone and their roommate was gay. And at this point, I was very open about the fact I came out as bi, but that was kind of like a cover of my own ass. But I was very open about the fact that I didn't agree with ostracizing gay people.
Mhm.
And I didn't think that being gay was a sin. I just didn't think it was. It didn't make sense to me. Again, like, I feel like I'm one of those people that I'm like, you can like read the Bible, and if you want to look for homophobic texts, you can find them. But you can also find texts justifying slavery. You can also find texts justifying rape.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you are going to either hold the Bible, all of it, to the same standard, or look at it through a dynamic lens and like think about what is best serving us as a society. Because I always thought of the Bible as like a book of wisdom. And it's like, you have to have like, and this is back, I'm not a Christian anymore, but at the time I was like, you have to have the Holy Spirit to interpret it for you. And like, whatever is the most loving thing, you should always err on the side of love rather than like on the side of legalism. Cause like literally Jesus called people out for being too legalistic. And like, one of Jesus's key phrases was, "You've heard it been said, but I say to you." And he was constantly flipping scripture on his head. Like, that was his key like thing. Like, and I was like, why would you choose the side of hurting people? And I remember specifically this girl that I was discipling, she came to me about her roommate that was gay, and she was like, "What should I do about it?" I was like, you don't need to do anything about it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's fine. like there's no crisis here. And to them, it was like this crisis of like, they had to like somehow fix their roommate. And I was like, I kind of was like, I mean, you have sin in your life. I was like, even if you think it's a sin, like, how is it any different than anything you're struggling with? And why do you feel the need to like correct them on it? Because even though in my mind it wasn't a sin, I was like, even if you do think it's a sin, like, it's not your job to like correct them. It's not your job to fix them unless they specifically like ask you that they like want help on something. Don't, like, that's not your job. like God didn't say go out and fix everybody. Like, that's just, like, don't worry about it. Just do you and love them the best that you can and like be accepting. But yeah, so I started this group, and I think I wonder if that might have been the conversation that was then getting back to like the leaders, that I was like saying the wrong things. And I was saying that evangelism wasn't good, and I was saying that like gay people are fine. And it was funny because no one ever said anything directly to me. It was like someone else that told me. They're like, "Oh yeah," like they had like a meeting about like telling people to not get advice from you and to not like get discipled by you. Cause like I also ran my discipleship like however I wanted to. And like didn't follow, like they gave us like these guides for how to disciple and like this like booklet that we were supposed to follow. And I was just like, this is stupid. We're not doing that.
And instead of coming to you directly, of course, they would, of course, it
was just like all this stuff behind my back.
Yeah.
And it was funny because like by the time I actually found out that like that kind of stuff was being said about me, I had already left at that point, because my senior year, I was fed up. I was really fed up with the organization of Crew. I think the breaking point for me is I went on a missions trip to Tennessee. We lived there for the whole summer. And I'd met this girl. She's like one of my best friends from Texas. And we were subjected to like, it was like all the fundamentalness of like Crew that's like kind of like thickly veiled in college, because like you kind of have to in a college space. The veil kind of came off, and it was like more rigid, and it was like very much more so they could be more strict about imposing all these rules. I literally have an email that was sent to all the women about like all these rules that we had to follow to not cause our brothers to stumble. And
aren't they Baptist? Are they Baptist?
I don't know. I think they're not denominational.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I think they have the Baptist theology pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're definitely very purity culture heavy.
Yeah.
I know.
It's very like Baptist adjacent. Yeah. I grew up Baptist, so it was all very familiar to me. But I think that summer, being in that pressure cooker, and we were doing things every single night, like doing some type of ministry related thing every night. And me and Marcy, my roommate, we were the only people that had jobs because everybody had to have a job, but we were the only people that were working 5 days out of the week, like Monday through Friday. And so I remember telling them, I was like, I'm like, a few weeks in the summer, I was like, hey, I'm not going to come to this thing tonight. I am tired. Like, I just need some time to myself. I'm an introvert. Like, I've been going and going and going. I need a break. And they told me, like, they shamed me for like taking a break. They were like, you really shouldn't skip things. Like, this is really an important time for community. And I was like, fuck you guys. I'm taking a break. Like, I didn't say it meanly, but I was just like, I'm sorry, but I'm taking this break. Like, because she was trying to talk me out of it. I was like, I'm taking this break. I'm sorry. And it was just things like that all summer where it brought all of the extremes of what I had been unconsciously subscribing to the surface, made me realize just how awful they were, and how toxic the culture was. Because I think being in that pressure cooker really just like, you really saw it for what it was, because it was not veiled anymore, because you were, and especially since it was in Tennessee, it was even, I think, it was just more so like, it was everything that was happening in Crew, but like to a extended level, because you're also like in the South and it's like more fundamentalist there. But like, I was like, dang, like this is making me realize like all the flaws and all the things that I'm believing, and that it's not helping people, it's hurting people. And our whole like mission was to talk to these J1 students, so like these people that would get a visa and work in Gatlinburg for the summer, because it has a lot of summer work. And we're supposed to befriend them and then eventually convert them, or whatever. We would like host these events and we would advertise them as like game nights or movie nights, and it would be like the Jesus film. or like game nights that were like spiritual games. And it was so manipulative, and I hated it. And like from like the first, like me and Marcy Bonnie were like, this is so manipulative. And like, because these people were coming to like find connection and make friends, because like they're just here for the summer, they don't know anybody, like trying to like hang out, and then we're just like trying to spiritually manipulate them. And they literally gave us a talk at the beginning of the mission of how to get around people's cultural differences, not so that you could understand like while their perspectives are different, it was to defeat their perspective. So it was like, oh, these people are coming from like this Eastern mindset, so here's how to like get around that, so that way we can give them like our mindset and how it's different and how it's better. Like it was like how to understand different cultures, so that way you could then like overtake like
colonialism.
Basically
Incredibly
it was literally like
supremacist,
teaching us to like colonize people. It was awful. And that mission trip was honestly, I think, the breaking point for me. So that was the mission trip my junior year, going into my senior year. And going into my senior year, I was like, I was still holding on. Jesus was the last thing that I let go of. But going into my senior year, I was just like, I'm done with this organization. I've given my all to this organization, and I was never accepted. I was never treated as an equal. I was used as this prop to make a lot of white men feel good about themselves, because they were helping me. Because like there was like this group of guys that had kind of like taken me in and like let me let me stay with them, and they had like an extra room that they like a couch that they would let me crash at, stuff like that. And I was really just the person that made them feel like, oh, they were such good people. Look at us helping this poor girl. And like and they'd always be like, oh, we've learned so much from you. And like, like you've taught us so much about empathy and like all this different stuff. And I was like, I do not exist to make you feel good about yourself. And I think my reaction, being the stubborn person that I am, is I doubled down on my knowledge of scripture and my understanding of Jesus. And I tried so hard to debate with my Christian friends on like basically like how narrow-minded a lot of like their like in practice, like how they were being and how it was affecting people. And I was like, do you not see that even if like you are like you are participating in this, and like you're part of this, and like you're still not like recognizing it. And how like the things that you were saying actually don't line up with scripture. Because like I feel like my reaction to things is like I always revert to research. I'm like, if I can find out everything, because again, I think also like having that chip on my shoulder, I was like, I have to know everything about this. That way, like if I'm ever in an argument, I can be like ready. I can have all these like all my like rebuttals ready to go, and like they'll take me seriously because I've done my research, and that just like wasn't the case.
Yeah.
So like
Also, yeah. Well, just empathetic, passionate, and well-researched is not a good combination for staying in Christianity and the church.
Yeah. And I think I was so stubborn my senior year. I was so stubborn because I was so convinced that I could, if I was researched enough, if I was articulate enough, then I could, because I thought in my heart that like these were good people deep down. They just like, don't realize what they're doing, kind of thing. And they don't realize how it's harmful to people like me. And like I think since they were all in their Christian bubbles, I think to me I was like kind of being this representative of I don't want to say minority, like, but like kind of like a minority to them, like of being that close in relationship to someone that had like a background that I did, and had like the experiences that I had, and that was a person of the LGBTQ community. I feel like I was like, sadly enough, like one of the most like diverse people in the friend group, because everyone looked the same. Everyone was from the same background, and I was like, if they can't empathize with me, and I've been friends with them for the past like 4 years, they are never going to empathize with anyone that they might be then inflicting this like same pain onto, or like the same bad theology onto. Because at this point I was starting to recognize again, I think I had always unfortunately defaulted to buying into the conservativist Christian kind of idea. And especially like when 2020, when like the racial tension happened, literally the leader of our organization told us that we shouldn't be so quick to hop onto Black Lives Matter because it's a secular movement. And like a pastor like gave a speech at our organization that was like politically neutral, and they were mad that he hadn't encouraged them to vote for Trump. And like just because he had been neutral about it. And like and at that point I was just starting to see that like I was fighting a beast. I was fighting against something that was bigger than me, and that I couldn't change by myself. And I was starting to realize that I was kind of just throwing my head up against the wall. Because I think up until then, I had some type of belief in me that like I could start this change. And if we could change this one group, then it could like, like I had this hope that Christianity could like kind of be reformed, and churches could do better. Christians could do better. And yeah, like I really believed that, and I was really trying to advocate for that. And I was trying, like, again, with that like bad Christians, I was trying to create those spaces. I was trying to like show that it could be different. And I think people liked to flirt with it, and like to like they would like come maybe to like a meeting one time, and it was like fun for them. But at the end of the day, Christians have this idea that their mindset is correct, and they are never, it is never a conversation with a Christian. It is always a debate. It's never like, it's never just like, let's have a discussion. It is, let's have a discussion so then I can show you how I'm right. Or, and I think even when I was in like those like kind of more like apologetic, it was just like, I realized a lot of Christians, they're so convinced that Christianity is the right answer, and they seem like, oh, like if you look at all other religions, like Christianity is the one that makes sense, and here's all these reasons for it. But really all that they've done is they've found other people that have the same beliefs of them, that write books like I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, and that reaffirm their own beliefs about the world. And they just find those people and they latch onto them, and there's like, see, look, this person shows it, or like Ravi Zacharias, and they'll be like, see, look at all, like, see everything that they've said that like proves Christianity, without actually really looking for evidence of Christianity outside of the Bible. I think like most Christians, they only look for things that affirm what they already believe, rather than being like, is there evidence for Christianity outside of Scripture? Because if it's true, then there should be. You take away the Bible like as your platform for circular reasoning, is there any other evidence to support it? And the answer is like overwhelmingly, in my opinion, no. For a lot of things. I remember believing my whole life that Moses was like a historical person. Like I thought that he was like a historical figure, and he's not. He's just not. I read this book, and it was talking about how Moses was most likely a story that was created to unite Judaism in order to like have a common history, and to like bring them like two like groups of people together, and to kind of give them this like shared story.
Like founding myths that create and help sustain like a culture are super important to culture, but that doesn't, just because they're important to culture and to history, doesn't mean that they are fact and that they're accurate of what happened.
Yeah. And it's crazy once you're out of the echo chamber, how much you realize it was just an echo. Like it was just like people just constantly, it's like you're living your life through a lens of confirmation bias. You're constantly attributing everything to like, oh, look how this is affirming of my belief system, and spiritualizing everything. Like, oh my God, like everything is either a blessing from God or a lesson from God. Like, it can never be anything else. Like, it's always, everything's intentional. And it's like, I think for me as like someone who had a lot of trauma, like it was really hard for me, especially when I was kind of getting more into like a healing process. I was like, there was no reason for this. Nothing good came out of this. You can say it gave me perspective, you can say it gave me wisdom, but like I would give it all back, and you can keep the wisdom, perspective, whatever you want to say that I have. This caused irreparable damage that I caused to myself and others. And it took years of my life from me. Like I said, there's years of my life that I don't remember because of how much trauma I had been through. And there's actions that I took as a result of that caused me to hurt other people and caused me to hurt myself. And there's nothing that anyone can say to me that's going to be like, happened for a reason. Like, no. If anything, that mindset kept me trapped in my trauma longer, because like I said, I was in that cycle of like, I have to make something good come out of this. This has to be for a reason, or using it in the other sense of like, well, all this bad stuff happened to me. It must be because I'm a terrible person. Or like in my interactions with men that were negative, I would be like, well, this must have happened to me because there's something wrong with me. And so if anything, the Christian belief in God and believing in the sovereignty of God, if anything, kept me in that damaged place longer. It prevented me from getting the help I needed sooner. Because I constantly thought that God should be enough, and that if I just did the right things, then I would be healed. And if I just prayed long enough and whatever, like God would send some dude to fix me eventually. And that was never going to happen. That was never going to happen. Just, it was just nothing good came out. Nothing good came out of.
No, of course. Yeah. No, and that's so harmful to think that. Yeah. No, I know we do have to be wrapping up soon, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there was so much there. Like, this could go on for so long. Like, I have so many different avenues and like questions we could take this. But yeah, I mean, first of all, just thank you for like sharing all that you did. I think that I mean, it was vulnerable, and I think it's really important. You know, I want to just call back to what you said at the very beginning about not doing the no true Scotsman fallacy, not saying not all Christians or not my church. You know, from my experience, basically every church that I've been in, especially the ones that are in the evangelicalism like umbrella, all have very much the same systemic and individual issues that you said.
Yeah.
Some of them are better at hiding it than others, or some of them make it sound less legalistic for certain things, but it's gonna be there. So if you are a Christian listening to this, I would encourage you to look for those.
And I am so tired of Christians asking people to feel safe in spaces that have been historically unsafe for people like me, and for claiming that this is a place that people can go to feel loved when it is not. Like, if you want to be your little club or whatever, that's fine. Don't claim to be the safe space. Don't ask me to feel safe in a place where I've been historically unsafe, because it's just never going to happen. And until a church does some real work and, like, you know, dismantling all of these like negative belief patterns and these negative systems that they have in place, people aren't going to feel safe there, and you shouldn't try to convince them that they should feel that way, because I think that was something that I had some regrets about, is I would pull people into this, you know, those Christian spaces expecting them to find community there, and then I would end up in like exposing them to harm. And so stop asking people to go to church.
Oh, definitely.
Oh my gosh.
Well, Ash, I know you've already said like kind of what you want to say to Christians for the most part, but what would you say then to wrap this up to people that may find themselves on somewhat of a similar journey as we've all had, where, you know, either they don't fully identify with the church or with Christianity, or they're somewhere in the broader deconstruction community, and are listening and looking for a place, wandering, hopefully.
Looking for a place, wandering, hopefully. I think the hardest thing for me to let go of was Jesus, because I think in my story, Jesus was always the lifeline that I always saw him as a lifeline. I always saw him as the savior in my life. And I want people to realize that deconstructing Jesus it doesn't have to be, it's okay. It's going to be okay. It is okay to because that was the hardest thing for me, was letting go of that last piece. And I was always taught that you either had to see Jesus as God or he was crazy. And that's not true. And honestly, like, Jesus didn't even really outright claim to be God. But it's believing in a deity, I think, is at its best a false comfort. And at its worst, it is a excuse to enact harm on yourself and others. And giving up the false comfort of a God is really, really scary at first. But I think you'll find that once you do so, embracing the idea that life is kind of just chaotic is honestly kind of freeing in a way, because it gives you so much more autonomy. It gives you autonomy back in the sense that you're like, if I want to be a healthy person, like, I have to take that responsibility to be a healthy person. If I want to be a loving person, it has to be because I want to be a loving person. And, you know, bad things are always going to happen, and like things are always going to be chaotic, but all that you're in control of is like what you do and like who you surround yourself by. And life is so, so short. And I think something that we get trapped into is like this idea of like, oh, like cosmic justice is going to fix things. And it's not. So I feel like it gives us the autonomy back of like, we want things to be better, we have to be better. Like, we have to like, if we want you know, we want justice for the world. We need to advocate for each other. We need to like stand up for one another. We need to listen to like all of these communities. Like, honestly, if you're in the deconstructing space for Christianity, I would encourage you to listen to people of color, because honestly, they have been doing the work of deconstruction on a much deeper level for so much longer. And, you know, I think like for us, like leaving Christianity is like the closest we will ever get to like having to recognize like a harmful system that has like harmed us. But like imagine like a person of color where it's like, you know, you can't just like leave like the world. Like we could leave the church, but like they are like constantly like acknowledging like those oppressive systems and recognizing it, and like well versed in that deconstruction work. So I would think just like listening to if you're someone that's like scared of like dismantling, you know, your Christianity, like go into those spaces, because it's going to give you so much encouragement, because those people are like doing the work, and like you can do the work too, and it's it's worth it, I think.
Yeah.
Ash, do you want to shout out any of your socials? If you want to, you don't have to.
Yeah. If you want to see, I have some poems on deconstruction on my Instagram if you want to read them. So Ash N Kingsland. It's just Ash, my middle initial, which is N, and then Kingsland, just like it sounds. I just started a TikTok, but I'm too embarrassed to share that. I'm trying to get into painting again, so I'm trying to like force myself to make paint TikTok. But
Ooh, okay, there we go. Yeah.
All right. If you want to follow Hopefully Wandering Podcast, we got Instagram, we got Twitter. There's some spicy stuff on that Twitter. There's some spicy stuff on our TikTok.
A little bit, yeah. We're trying to get into TikTok, so follow us there.
Yeah. Collier's killing that game. You're the one with all the views, Collier.
I try, you know, sometimes.
Yeah.
I get all the views on my one little stupid edit that has nothing to say.
It's one TikTok that blew up. Yeah. If you don't mind, dear listeners, please give us a good rating, especially on Spotify. I just looked at our Apple Music for the first time in a long time. We got like 3 1-star ratings. Guys, please help us out right now. Please. Yeah. So some of the mad people are rating us really low. So if you like this, like at least give us like a 4 or something. You know? All right.
Don't alone. Guys are out here doing the work, man.
All right, Ash. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time.
Yeah.